Hey guys, in this video we'll be exploring a small corner in the world of the Elder Scrolls Online, the Endgame PvE community. Often lambasted as elitist and toxic, we're going to be looking at what it's really like to be an endgame raider in this small sub-community, and also give you guys some information on how to get started if you're ever interested in PvE raiding in ESO. The first thing we need to clarify is that just like every other community, endgame PvE does admittedly have a few bad eggs, but that doesn't define the entire population. Many players in the ESO community, or even in other games like World of Warcraft, distrust and stereotypes raiders as typically elitist, toxic, or generally as people that don't like playing with or teaching inexperienced players. However, this is a bit far from the truth, and there are two compelling reasons for this. The first reason is that perspective of course matters. From the viewpoint of a person who's simply trying to have the Skyrim experience in ESO or do whatever they want, being told what to do in a dungeon or trial or being critiqued, especially in a game, does not sit well with most people. And this is fine, and we'll touch on this point more later. The second reason is that the endgame community is so small that it's worse than, European royalty committing incest. Across the entire population of Xbox, PS4, and PC on both Europe and North America, it's safe to estimate that less than 5%, or if we're being extremely generous, less than 10% of the population is into PvE raiding, and much less, even more so, when we look at the more competitive side of things. Now, many guilds want more players, whether they're new or experienced. I would say pretty much every raider wants more people to be interested in doing trials with them and ultimately grow this community. So if you're intimidated or whatever by the prospect of trying to get into more veteran trials or to try out for a group, please do not be intimidated. ESO is one of the few games where I think the majority is incredibly friendly and helpful, and this applies to the majority of the endgame community as well, if you're willing to learn and, more importantly, have fun. Now that we've cleared up some misunderstandings, let's take a look at what endgame PvE is like. When guilds advertise themselves as progression raid guilds, they are for the most part referring to having at least one group of 12 people attempting to clear content. Whether that's Hellraw Citadel or Halls of Fabrication, it doesn't matter. When guilds like Hodor or Mindness advertise themselves as endgame progression raid guilds, they are referring to having at least one team of 12 people attempting to not just clear content but to push and master both themselves and the trials. A lot of people watch Outcast videos or other ESO YouTube videos where raid guilds clear hard mode content or get very high scores with all of their vitality or lives remaining. What you might not see though is the behind the scenes of hours upon hours, the weeks upon weeks of countless soul gems being used on dead people, the agony of having to reset an entire instance multiple times per day just to get what you want, and the surprising difficulty of managing to get 12 people together on at the same time to do the same thing. On average, an endgame raider can spend 10 to 15 hours per week raiding with their teams or with other organized groups. My personal schedule may be an extreme example, but I spend 3 hours on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday each, and another 3 hours on Thursday, with 4 hours on both Friday and Saturday, totaling up to 20 hours per week, where I have to raid with 11 other people to achieve what we want. But yes, this does sound like half of a full-time job. It sounds like so much work for just a game, you might say. Yes, this is a lot of work and effort, which understandably puts a lot of people off from doing it, because a lot of people have children, jobs, and so on. But again, that was an extreme example. My schedule is, and you can, of course, put less hours into it per week. But like any hobby or work in life, it can be very rewarding in the end. So why does it take up so much time? What exactly does clearing, mastering, and pushing content mean? So clearing content is pretty self-explanatory. It just means to finish any content, whether it's new or old, with your group, no matter how many people die or what the damage is like. Typically, pushing scores is basically clearing the content, but in a much more clean and efficient manner. Unfortunately, in ESO, scores don't really get you anything except a spot for the weekly rewards, if that trial happens to be the weekly trial, and some bragging rates. However, a lot of groups do set certain scores as their benchmarks or ultimate goals in a specific trial. Scores are, of course, based on vitality, how much life you have left by the end of the trial, the time it took to clear it, and this all ties in with damage, defined as how efficient your group DPS, tank, and healers perform. So mastery, the next point, is again self-explanatory. In addition to not just getting consistent clean clears with score, it also means you can go for the harder stuff like achievements. Trials like Halls of Fabrication, Asylum Sanctorium, and Cloud Rest have something called no death titles, which requires absolutely no one to die in your group of 12 while doing a speed run in the hard mode clear in the same run. It's very daunting. It sounds very daunting, and it can be. So what's in it for you? Why go through all of this? Why do you have to be stressed about all this? Is it worth it? I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys here, unlike other infomercials where they try to fuck you over. The rewards for an endgame raider isn't really much. Yes, you do get undone plunder, yes, you do get gold jewelry and a chance at perfected stuff. Otherwise, however, there aren't really that many cosmetics or rewards that would be enticing to most of you. Most endgame raiders raid for their personal goals to get certain achievements and titles and for skins. And some, of course, just enjoy raiding itself, but otherwise, not much in it when you compare it to other things in the game, as all of this can cost quite a bit of gold investment to improve your gear and buy better potions and so on and so on and so on. However, of course, there is that immense satisfaction that you just can't quite describe you get from accomplishing something as an individual and a team.
Good motherfucking job.
Yes!
Finally.
Oh yes!
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah, do we have it?
Fuck.
Oh yeah, we do.
No, you.
I got him now.
He's down. Big hills, Nephis.
Shielding. I got 7.
Yes! Fuck yes!
Fuck yeah! We did it!
Wait.
Holy. We did
No!
it.
Wait, fight him around, don't take him.
Gee fucking
Yes!
Oh my god.
I died
Yes.
right then. It's amazing.
Dude, with
So, if you are interested in becoming a PvE raider and you're bored of just doing anonymous pledges and dungeons, and you want something more fulfilling and exciting like trials, you have come to the right place, my friend. In this video and in the description down below, I have given you guys links to a couple of endgame community discords, like Toxic Raiding Environment and Verified. There are many awesome and nice people in those discords willing to recruit or help you learn basics and advanced facets of PvE in the Elder Scrolls Online. As a tank and healer, you'll want to study up on a few things like what sets to get or wear. Never ever go in blind, no matter how experienced you are. Just watching a video or two can help immensely, and never be afraid to ask questions. As a DPS, you'll also want to do the same thing, but also practice your damage rotation whenever and wherever you can. Dungeons or even dummies, I highly recommend getting combat metrics add-on if you're on PC. A lot of DPS in the past sent me and other raid leads 3 million health dummy parses, and while that is a good start, I recommend doing your practice on 6 million health dummies as that shows a better understanding of where you're at. And if you can, practice on trial bosses if you're already in a raid group and record yourself doing it so you can review what you can improve on. I highly recommend YouTube channels like Lico, Andy S, The Asian God, Style Anima, Pro NDC, Vanavere, and many others to see examples of how more experienced players are doing. Lastly, don't be afraid to apply for or join raid guilds. Hell, even sign up for random raids. Obviously, you won't be starting out in the best of the best groups without getting any experience, unless you're somehow an insane ESO prodigy. If your goal is to ultimately push yourself as hard as you can and raid more competitively, just keep going at it. As with all things, what you will do will be noticed, whether it's your high score in Master Arena or another random place, and this brings us to our next fun fact. The 3 qualities any raid lead will look at is consistency, performance, and how adaptable or open-minded you are. The first point, consistency, is not just fixing how many times you die on the boss or how high your debuff uptimes are. Yes, those are important. However, it's also about being on time for raids and general things as a person. Unfortunately, this also pertains to your internet connection and how often you crash, as this can affect the group directly. If you're on console, best of luck to you. If you're Australian or living in a region of Asia, and I know there are many players in North America that are, and you're frustrated with your ping and so on, there are fortunately and unfortunately ways to improve that through programs like What the Fast. But generally speaking, there are quite a few good Australian and Asian endgame raiders that still outperform others on North America despite their ping. Performance will come with time, obviously, as you gain more experience, and again, most people will help you along the way. The last quality of being open-minded is important no matter who you are. Never get married to a single concept or idea or build. If you have to change something to improve yourself or the group, do it. I know it's kind of hard taking criticism for your ideas or whatever, but no one is ever really impressed by someone stubbornly refusing to change or try out new things for the sake of the group. No matter who you are, also, or where you come from in the Elder Scrolls Online, there's plenty of opportunity for you to improve and be successful in endgame PvE raiding. The only way for you to go is up. Some of the best healers in this game come from PvP. A lot of the good DPS I know now also originally come from PvP. I also knew a couple of really good DPS that were role players initially. I myself was just a person that just enjoyed questing and reading lore books until I got bored. And then there have been several star damage dealers that came out of seemingly nowhere until they were noticed by others to have potential. So honestly, again, the only way to go is up if you are ever interested in PvE raiding. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, I wish you the best of luck on your adventures. Also, huge thank you to those who continue to support me on Twitch. It motivates me a lot to keep on going and keep making content for ESO.